everybody. Welcome back to Love Restore. I am your host, Marshaun Olaniyan, and you are listening to KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes. I am your favorite host once again, Marshaun Olaniyan. Listen, I decided to start Love Restore because of our beautiful guest that is on here today. But before we speak to our beautiful guest, Gail, I want to talk to you about why I decided to start Love Restore. I decided to start Love Restore because just like many of you out there, I bumped my head a time too many by not having the tips, the tools, the strategies, the education, or any formal talks from my parents or guardian about relationships, about marriage. And it was a pivotal move for me to start Love Restore because even though I grew up around relationships my entire life, I'm also a preacher's kid. We did not have any formal conversations about how to show up as yourself, how to love on yourself, how to be in a relationship, how to select the correct mate. But before even doing any of that, how I needed to love myself, how I needed to accept myself. And so I'm sure, like many of you out there who have dealt with something very similar, instead of you going down the road that I did, which is a divorce, instead of you going down that road, my hope is that you can come here, learn something, and apply it to your life so you don't have to go down the same road that I did. And if I can help one person from either stop from marrying the wrong person or saying, you know what they're bringing to the table is not for me, and being okay with walking away, then I have fulfilled my God given purpose. So thank you so much for coming to Love Restore. I have something exciting for you for these next 30 minutes. So without further ado, I am going to bring on the beautiful Gail to introduce herself, and then we're going to jump into this juicy conversation because, ladies and gentlemen, this is the segment of Black Love Diaries, the segment within Love Restore. And we're talking about the real on relationships as it applies to us in the Black community. So without further ado, Gail, please introduce yourself to this beautiful audience.
Thank you, Marshaun. So happy to be here with you tonight. I'm Gail, and I am a nurse for 40 years. I've been married for 40 years happily. And I'm a graduate student, being doctoral prepared last few months before I graduate. And I'm so grateful to have met Marshaun. And I want to tell you the same, what you said in your intro, that's exactly what happened to me. I was raised in foster care by guardians who didn't have, just wasn't going to be talking about relationships and all that. They were born in 1800s and they were running a speakeasy, and that, they were doing everything in the speakeasy that you would expect people born in the 1890s to be doing, which was the girls were there, the party materials were there, everything was there, the guns, the party nights, and the gambling, you name it, it was happening in the speakeasy.
Hold on, Gail. Hold on. Because you're going hard in the paint already, which I love. But I want to back up because you mentioned something that maybe everybody doesn't understand what it is. So can we back up to the speakeasy? What is a speakeasy?
It's a house of ill repute. So, there were girls that were selling their bodies and had been since the 1920s. And they had these fellas in Chicago, and they had been friends and lovers probably for 40, 50, 60 years. And they were in their 70s and 80s by the time I was born. And all the girls had a room. And so the fellas would come over, and it would be the same crew. And they did what they did. And then there was also some little packages behind the bar that, I'm sure were illegal. Everything.
Okay, wait a minute. So let's make it plain. Was this a WHOR?
Yes, it was a whole house. Absolutely.
Okay, so this was your upbringing. And you said that you had started working there at how old? Because I know you mentioned
I
the
was
child
I
labor.
was I was a foster kid at 6 months. They got me at 6 months. They raised us, and we started probably working at 2 or 3.
So your upbringing wasn't traditional,
No,
right?
by no stretch
Upbringing
of the
wasn't
imagination.
traditional, which also means that you guys didn't have any structure, as we were talking about. That's when you were saying the correlation between the opening of what I mentioned versus, as well as yourself. No talks, no instructions about relationships or anything
Nothing.
because they were running a business. You guys were a part of the business, whether you wanted to be
Right.
in the
Right.
business or not. It was
That's
all
right.
about the money, essentially.
That's
The
right.
money and
Right.
making sure that everybody ate at least and was clothed, but
The house was
really
clean.
the money.
Right.
Yeah,
The
right.
laundry was done. Laundry being done was important. Right. So basic things like that.
Fast forward, now are you in college now when you
I
have
was
met
in college. Yes.
Mr.
Young
Yes.
world decided, yes, in
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
Chicago. And
Mhm.
decided to go to the original pancake house for my breakfast. I had loved this waffle thing and I was going to get some of that. And I had saved $20 to pay for my own meal. And this
Mhm.
gentleman, as I finished paying I could feel somebody kind of looking at me and behind me. And I just was like, whatever, because I've got organic chemistry to deal with. I had no time to to be dealing with any foolishness or distractions at that point. I was very focused on getting this undergraduate education together. So we
Okay.
go out to the car. Okay, so what? He had a fancy Porsche. I told him right then I was not. I didn't care about a 911. I just didn't. I didn't know it was a 911 at the time, but I didn't care. I knew it was a fancy car, and I could care less. So he said, well, that's cool. Why don't you give me your number? And then I'm busy too. And when I get back to town, I will give you a jingle. We can go out for some ice cream. I said, ice cream is what we need to be doing because I'm not doing anything else. And so get that together. So he really understood that I was setting some serious limits and boundaries because I'd already been through some mess with that first relationship that I really didn't appreciate. The brother lying and doing some cheating and some other things that just were unnecessary. So
Okay.
went through a lot, broke up, grateful for that, and made it out safely, but knew that the next time around I was gonna play my cards a little differently with the next fella. So when I noticed that I had put him off and he was still wanting to have something to do with the situation, I thought, let me try to make this work to my advantage. Here's a brother who's interested.
Okay.
Let me try to make that work.
Well, I feel like you definitely worked it to your advantage, to
I
say the
did.
least.
Thank God.
So you grew up in a non-traditional
Hmm.
household,
Hmm.
and now you also have a non-traditional marriage.
I
So can you tell us
know.
about your non-traditional marriage? Because
Absolutely.
so
So,
many people want to know about this, but also, a lot of women and even men, but really women want to know what it's like to be in a non-traditional marriage. How are you making it work? Because I don't know if you remember her saying she's been married for 40 plus years. So she's in a non-traditional marriage, and I want her to define what her non-traditional marriage looks like, if you would,
thank
Gail, and then kind of tell us a little bit about the marriage
Yeah,
itself.
absolutely. Happy to do that because I too, like you, want to share so that other women can just get this together. Because it's for me, it started out very scary, and I was feeling like I wanted a partner, but I needed to have the right one. And so, how I did it was I identified somebody who liked me, probably in a moment more than I liked him, which was a great start. The old people had always told me that find somebody who likes you more. And then I decided that I was really in that moment gonna follow my truth. I was gonna follow my heart, and I was gonna tell that brother, come what may. He could walk out the door and turn around and never call, never see me again, and it was gonna be okay, because I was gonna be okay. So I was trusting in my spiritual practice. I'm a mystic, and I was just gonna go for that and just trust something different. And so when we started going for that ice cream at the beach there in Chicago and Lake Shore Drive, if people know the area, I I was clear. I'm going back to the university to get my homework done. He said, let's go to a party, so I was very clear about what I had to do. So I set very clear limits on him because I had priorities that didn't include him. With or without him, I had to be successful. I had 5 younger sisters behind me. So I had to be successful. That's what the driver was, right? So when time passed and we had gone out, we had gone places and we had done things, and I still was very clear about I'm getting back to school. And then about 3 or 4 months after that, I found out that I was accepted into a school in Boston at Harvard, and I decided to go up there and care less what went down with the relationship. He was still very nice. He was still very caring. He still stayed in touch, and I did my thing. I went to Boston and I stayed the time that I needed to stay there, and I came back and I got accepted into another school that was in North Carolina. So at that point,
hold on, Gail, because I want to know you had a plan for your life, whether he was in it or not.
yes, yes,
However, he surprised you and stayed around,
yes.
right? Because at this point, as we've mentioned more than one time, 40 plus years. So if you were very strict, if you will, in your plan, how did you get to the I do?
Because I just kept telling him what I had to do, and he told me. I asked him that sometimes. He said, I like that you had so much potential. He was already a professional. He was already an attorney. He was already had LLMs, which are master's degrees, 2 of them actually, in law. So he was already distinguished in his field. He could have been dating just about anybody he wanted to be, and he knew a lot of celebrity women. But that wasn't the kind of relationship he obviously didn't want it. So I didn't care about what he was doing and who he knew and where he was going. I had to focus on what I had to do. And he always told me he was impressed with my potential and the fact that I was committed to my sisters. He shares with me today that those things made him feel love for me, which really blew me away, because those were the things that I was just going for because that's what made me feel good. And for the first time, I was working on making myself feel good in front of somebody else rather than showing up for them first and then hoping they would reciprocate, because that's what happened the first time. It didn't work out. So now I was just going to stand firm and true because I was already alone and I was prepared to be alone. So I wasn't the cutest girl in the room. And so, I had some social difficulties with getting on. But anyway, I was going to be myself and show up as best I could in the world to do what I needed to do. And I had service on my mind when I was going to school. So I wanted to become a nurse. And that's why I've been a nurse for 40 years. And then I kept progressing with these other credentials to move myself forward so that I could be my best version of my professional self from the people I serve. That's why I did that work, right? And so I could really be in that space. So it was very altruistic, but I also had taken back a lot of what I needed to do for me. And in that, there was just tremendous blessings because he's a generous man.
Let me ask you this, because he obviously allowed you to be you.
Yes.
And he allowed you to be you. He accepted you for who you are. And as you mentioned, he had not only helped you, he helped several of your family members to up-level their own lives as well because of his economic status.
Right.
Okay.
That was my ask.
His staying around, you saying I do, well, the both of you saying I do to one another, defining the non-traditional marriage piece. So not non-traditional marriage, Do you guys live together?
Never have, because I've been on the run trying to get these academic credentials together. And like I said, I
Oh, wait,
went,
wait, hold on, Gail, because I don't know if they
yeah,
heard you. I don't know if
hmm
they heard you. So you said you've been married 40 plus years
yes, and
and
never
you and
lived
your
with him.
husband have never lived together.
No.
How did you do that?
Well, because I was busy, he was busy. So if you know bond attorneys, they have to show up in different cities every week to court city government. So the governors, the mayors, because that's where the bond deals to finance city works, freeways, airports. I'm not a lawyer, so I just hear about
Okay.
it. Okay. But I never tried to step in his lawyer world, right? So that's the business that he was in, and he was working at that level, and he would always have to travel. And that was good
Okay.
because as soon as I finished one credential, 2 months, 3 months before that, or a semester or two before that, I was already applying to another credential so that I could keep my game moving, right? Because I
Mm.
was like, he's got those credentials. I want a doctoral degree too. And so I was so grateful to have the support to be able to get there. So I just kept
Ooh.
moving forward in my credentials, and it took me to all different places away from where we were. And then to answer your question, how did we get married? I never thought he was going to ask me to marry him. Okay, we were kicking it for a long time with that ice cream. I was telling you, we were not getting busy because it was. I
Right,
was
right.
just, no, I'm not that kind of. I wasn't going to do that again. I was working on my second virginity. So what I was letting him know was, whatever you're doing and wherever you got to go and whatever you have to do, good luck with that. That's you, and just enjoy yourself, because I'm not always going to be able to go out with you to these different events, because I have to prioritize my midterms, finals, papers, and all the rest of the life that comes with trying to move through these spaces academically. And so I had to focus. So a lot of times I couldn't go out.
Okay, okay. So we're getting ready to take a commercial, but I want you to answer this question when we come back, which is, with you prioritizing yourself, and essentially what I hear is that you made you numero, however you say that in Spanish, number one.
That's right.
You made yourself
Exactly.
number one. And how do you think that helped your relationship, and even how do you think that it hindered your relationship? So that's the question when we come back.
Thank you.
Listen, this is already juicy. All right, but we got to pay some bills. So thank you so much for being here. This is Love Restore. I am your host, Marshaun Olaniyan, and you are listening to KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes. Listen, we have so much to offer here, as you already hear me this evening with Gail, and we're talking about relationships. And you don't have to be in a traditional relationship to be happy, right? But and Brownstone offers so much. Not only do we talk about relationships here, we talk about numbers and statistics and how they don't lie. We talk about parenting, the real on parenting. We have music here by DJ Tony. We have a plethora of adventures by different personalities and experiences here, right here on Brownstone. So if you have not shared this station with a friend or a family member that you actually like, and let's be real, with those that you don't like as well, then do that right now. If you have not subscribed to the magazine Brownstone Living, we have a digital subscription as well as a print copy. Check the link and download yours today or order yours today. It is a subscription. If you decide to sign up for the subscription under my affiliate link, then I will receive a small portion of the funds. With that being said, thank you so much for being here. I am a coach outside of Love Restored. So if you are looking for coaching and you are a Black woman, then I am your girl. You can reach me at Marshaun at MarshaunOlaniyan.com. without further ado, let's get back to this juicy conversation with Gail. So, Gail, I just mentioned about the helping and the hindering of you making yourself a priority throughout your relationship. So, if you would answer those questions, that would be awesome for the audience.
Yeah, it was really simple for me because I had no other choice, really. I had to take care of myself. I had to ask for what I needed and what I wanted. And I was fortunate and blessed that he was into me enough to be able to do it. So I was always come what may if he choose to leave. And you know what? That's the beauty of our non-traditional relationship because I know it said we're supposed to get married forever and until the death do the part, but we always said we check it in every year. And if this ain't working for you, you need to be about your business and get going and get into something else. So I never, and it was easy for me, Marshaun, because I didn't want any children. And he already had one, right? Well, I had 5 younger sisters. I had to make sure they were good. They were already on the planet. So I had to make sure they were good. And I found my natural mother and promised her I would help them out. What was the second question? How about what he didn't get?
No, just how did it hinder your relationship? No,
Well,
no,
it
you.
did.
Okay.
It did hinder him, because he was already a busy professional. A person at that level works. He was already working his 8 hours during the day, and he wouldn't even when we were together. We spent some time together. Spend He was already working 10, 12 hours a day, and then after that, he was still working and reading things and writing notes and planning for tomorrow. So he was already a very busy professional. And so I think he really appreciated not having the emotional burden of someone who had emotional demands on them. And when I focused on what I had to do, it allowed him to do his work any way he felt comfortable to do it because he didn't have to juggle a partner or a relationship. So I think that relationship actually worked for him in his early years in his career. So that was I think it was a win-win for him because now he doesn't have to consider, a partner at home with expectations about what we're going to do. And so it allowed him to really immerse himself in his career and move his career to another level.
Okay, that makes total sense. I don't have any follow up there, but I want to go back to you mentioning that you didn't want to have any children. What about him? Was that equal?
Well, he did ask me about it, but because he had one, and I told him, look, why don't, and the child was young, I said, look here, why don't you go talk to the ex and you guys sort out what you want to do with that child. And I'll support her and you. And even though they had divorced and she was moving on and in other relationships, I told him he didn't have to stop her alimony and her child support, even though the kid was living with us. Right? Be a blessed. She was accustomed to a certain lifestyle, being married to individual like that. So I was very generous of self, right? So I always said, and I don't have to come to the party to talk to about that. That's a private matter. You all had that child. I wasn't even on the scene. So take her out for dinner and sit her down and give her respect and write that even though that child was living with me, give her all the resources you want to give her. That's the mother of your child. And let's see how we can work together to support that child, right? So I think he really appreciated us being embracing the child. And then he asked me about a kid, and I told him I'm not the one. And so, but if you want to have other kids, wasn't the one. Still ain't the one. Okay.
I love the fact that you mentioned, and you didn't use this word, but it sounds like you and your husband have a lot of communication about different topics that a lot of people, even in a traditional marriage, don't have. So, can you speak to communication? And then, right after you do that, I'll ask you one final question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we were are astrologically compatible, right? So we had a lot of interest, and we really gelled that way. And because he was a few years older than me, I always wanted to tap his brain for information and knowledge around how I can improve myself, because I knew by him being older, there was going to be one day that the script was going to be flipped, and he was going to need some help probably as an older fella. And if we stayed connected, I was going to reciprocate that. I was never. I always wanted to have good karma in my relationships, healthy relationships. So I was intentional about what what I wanted to do to get my credentials, and how I was going to one day support him as well if he ever needed the help.
So yeah, so y'all communicated about a plethora of topics, and not
Exactly.
just your relationship, but also the world. You guys were on the same on one accord on a lot of
Right.
fronts. Okay, so this is my final question. This has been an awesome interview, and I'm really happy for for the viewers and listeners to get to experience this conversation with you. And so, because you're in a non-traditional marriage, and you and your husband have never lived together, you don't have any children together, I'm sure you get a lot of questions, right? So, my final question is, what is the one question you get asked all the time?
There is one, and it's like, okay, if y'all are living separate, like, like, are you worried about him slipping around with somebody else? And everyone asks me that. It's like, okay, you got a traditional relationship, but what about that piece? Especially the
Mhm.
women want to know, and the men too. They want to know, like, he's cheating, don't you? And I was like, let me tell you something. God gave him an organ, and I'm not his mom, and he gets a chance to use his body and his organ the way he wants to. I'm not a babysitter. But let me tell you something, when you get down like that, it just gives the female permission to do what they have to do and what they want to do too. See, so you'll see, go ahead and get it started. Go ahead and get that party started. So if you want respect and you want to handle this in a certain way, then I can meet you I can meet you right there. But if we want to do something else, just let me know. And you don't even have to tell me, because I'm not going to be chasing you around. I know. You see, that's the beauty about a woman. We are intuitive. We're gonna know, and so I know how to handle you.
What? Listen, like I said, Gail is bringing the fire. She is bringing the honesty, and this is what Black Love Diaries is all about, right? Gail is a part of a non-traditional marriage, but you see, she's made it work for her and her husband, and they're a team, and they've been doing it for 40 plus years. So, in order to have a successful marriage or even a successful relationship, because everybody doesn't want to be married, you have to find your person to create the life that you want, that works for the both of you. Because if this didn't work for Gail, if this didn't work for Gail's husband, then they still wouldn't saying that they're happily, not just married for 40, that they're happily married for 40 years. So you can absolutely create the life that you want. You have to be willing to speak up and ask for the things that you want, just like Gail was willing to put it all on the line, prioritize herself first, and say, if you want to come along for the ride, then great. If you don't, I understand that too. But this is my focus. This is where I'm going. And she stuck to that. And it worked out for her. It's worked out for her husband. And I want it to work out for you as well, because it does make a difference. And just know that you can create the relationship, you can create the marriage that you want by focusing on yourself first, making sure that you are good, that your heart space is good, right? Making sure that you are in love with yourself before you invite anybody else into your life. And I know that most of us have had relationships, and that's not always possible, but we got to backtrack sometimes and put the relationship on hold until we get the relationship with ourselves together first. I am your host, Marshaun Olaniyan.
Shay,
Thank you so much, Miss Gail, for coming and giving us the real on your Black love story. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate you. If you want to work with me outside of Love Restored, then reach out to me at Marshaun at MarshaunOlaniyan.com. If you have yet to pick up the magazine, do it in either print that you want it in, and continue to share this station with your family and friends, because this is the year of the neighbor, and we are trying to grow our neighborhood one subscribe and send / forward to your friend and family members. I love you guys, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I will see you on the next Love